Some people never ask for help, not because they don't need it, because somewhere along the way, asking became something they quietly stopped believing they were allowed to do. They're the person everyone calls first, the one who keeps the family together after bad news, the friend who always knows the right thing to say, the colleague who handles pressure without complaining, the sibling who steps in before anyone even asks. From the outside, this looks like strength. It gets praised. People describe them as dependable, mature, resilient, the rock. But psychology has a way of asking uncomfortable questions. What if the role everyone admires is also the role slowly exhausting the person living inside it? Because being strong isn't always a personality. Sometimes it's an adaptation. And adaptations always have a history. That's one of the ideas running through much of modern psychology. Researchers who study attachment, trauma, emotional development, and relationships often arrive at a similar conclusion from different directions. Human beings don't simply develop habits. They develop survival strategies. Some children learn that crying brings comfort. Others learn that crying creates more problems. Some discover that mistakes are forgiven. Others discover that mistakes make adults anxious, disappointed, or unavailable. Over time, children stop asking what they feel. They start asking something much more practical. What version of me keeps everything calm? That question can quietly shape an entire life. Not because anyone consciously chooses it. Because the nervous system learns faster than language. Long before someone can explain who they are, their body is already learning who it has to become. And sometimes, the child who becomes everyone's source of stability grows into the adult who no longer knows how to fall apart safely. Today isn't about criticizing strength. Strength saves families. Strength carries communities through impossible moments. Strength matters. But psychology also reminds us that every adaptation has a cost. The real question isn't whether you're strong. It's whether strength became the only identity you were ever allowed to have. There's an interesting pattern you start noticing once you pay attention. The strongest person in the room is often the least likely to admit they're struggling. Not necessarily because they're coping better, because they've spent years becoming fluent in concealment. Imagine someone arriving home after an exhausting day. Their phone lights up. A friend needs advice. A parent needs help. A sibling wants reassurance. Without thinking, they answer every message. Hours later, they finally sit alone and realize something strange. Nobody asked how they were doing. What's even stranger, they never expected anyone to. This is where the role begins revealing itself. The identity of the strong one often survives because everyone participates in maintaining it. Other people rely on it. The individual protects it. Eventually, it feels less like a role and more like reality. Carl Rogers described something remarkably similar through his idea of conditions of worth. Rather than feeling accepted simply for existing, some people gradually learn that approval depends on performing certain emotional roles. Being helpful, being responsible, being mature, being easy, being emotionally convenient. The role receives love. The person underneath becomes harder to recognize. That's an important distinction. Because once identity becomes tied to usefulness, rest starts feeling selfish. Need starts feeling dangerous. Receiving begins to feel unfamiliar. Not because anyone explicitly teaches those lessons, because they're absorbed through thousands of ordinary interactions. A child notices who receives attention, who creates conflict, who keeps peace. Children don't usually analyze these patterns. They adapt to them. Years later, the adaptation still exists. Only now people call it personality. Sometimes this role develops after obvious hardship. illness, addiction inside the family, financial instability. Divorce, loss, in those situations, children often step into emotional responsibilities far earlier than development intended. Other times, nothing dramatic happened. The home looked perfectly functional. Meals were on the table, school continued normally, vacations happened. But emotions quietly moved in one direction. Parents were overwhelmed. Stress filled the room. Feelings became inconvenient. The child learned something almost invisible. Don't become another problem. Psychologists sometimes refer to this as parentification, where children begin carrying emotional responsibilities that belong to adults. Not every responsible child becomes parentified. But when responsibility replaces childhood itself, the emotional cost often doesn't appear until decades later. Because adulthood rewards exactly the qualities that once ensured survival: reliability, competence, independence, emotional control. Success arrives. Compliments arrive. Respect arrives. And underneath all of it, the nervous system never receives evidence that vulnerability is equally safe. That's the contradiction. The very adaptation that earns admiration can quietly make intimacy harder. Not because the person lacks emotion, because they've become exceptionally skilled at protecting everyone else from seeing it. Competence has a strange side effect. The better you become at carrying emotional weight, the less often people check whether it's becoming too heavy. Think about the person everyone describes as always fine. They arrive early, remember birthdays, solve problems before anyone notices them. They rarely cancel plans, rarely complain, rarely ask for reassurance. Eventually, something subtle begins happening. People stop seeing their effort and start expecting it. What was once appreciated slowly becomes assumed. That's how emotional labor quietly disappears from view. Not because it has become smaller, but because it has become predictable. There's another contradiction hiding underneath this role. The stronger someone appears, the more isolated they can become. Not because people don't care. Because people stop imagining they need care. Psychologist Irvin D. Yalom spent decades writing about one of the most uncomfortable realities of being human: existential isolation. Even in loving relationships, parts of our inner experience remain unseen unless we allow someone else to witness them. The strong one often struggles with exactly that. Not because they're dishonest. Because vulnerability no longer feels like a language they speak fluently. They know how to comfort, how to advise, how to protect, how to organize chaos. But sitting quietly and saying, "I'm not okay today," can feel strangely unfamiliar, almost awkward, sometimes even embarrassing. Watch what happens in everyday conversations. Someone asks, "How are you?" The answer comes instantly, "I'm good," not because they've checked. Because the response has become automatic. It's efficient. Comforting, predictable, the conversation moves on. And another opportunity for genuine connection quietly disappears. That's the hidden cost. When people become experts at regulating everyone else's emotional comfort, they often lose practice recognizing their own. This doesn't happen overnight. It develops through repetition. A teenager who never wanted to burden exhausted parents. A university student who became everyone's emotional support. An employee who quietly handled everyone's mistakes. A partner who always apologized first, just to keep peace. Different environments, same pattern. Their identity becomes organized around emotional usefulness. Psychology distinguishes between healthy responsibility and overfunctioning. Healthy responsibility says, "I can help." Overfunctioning quietly says, "If I stop helping, everything might fall apart." Those beliefs sound similar, but they produce very different lives. Gabor Maté has often written that many adult coping strategies make perfect sense once their original purpose is understood. That's an important shift in perspective. The goal isn't to judge the adaptation, it's to understand it. Because the nervous system rarely asks, "Is this still necessary?" It asks something simpler. Did this keep me safe before? If the answer is yes, it keeps repeating the strategy. Even when life has changed, even when relationships have changed, even when the danger disappeared years ago. Survival habits don't retire automatically. Someone has to notice them first. Here's where another paradox appears. Many people described as emotionally independent aren't actually independent. They're emotionally self-contained. Those aren't the same thing. Independence allows closeness. Self-containment often prevents it. The first says, I can stand on my own and still lean on someone when I need to. The second quietly believes, if I lean, I become the problem. That's a much lonelier way to live. And because it often looks mature from the outside, few people recognize it as emotional protection. They simply call it strength. One of the biggest misconceptions about emotional survival is the belief that childhood adaptations disappear once childhood ends. Psychology suggests something very different. Most adaptations don't disappear. They evolve. The child who constantly scanned the room before speaking may become the adult who reads everyone's emotions before expressing their own. The teenager who solved family conflicts may become the manager who absorbs every crisis at work. The little girl praised for being so mature may become the woman who feels guilty every time she needs support. Different stages of life. Same nervous system. Bessel van der Kolk makes an observation throughout The Body Keeps the Score that has reshaped how many psychologists understand trauma. Experiences don't simply become memories. Many become patterns. Patterns of attention, patterns of emotion, patterns of expectation, patterns of physiology. In other words, the body doesn't just remember what happened. It remembers what it prepared itself to do. If staying calm protected relationships, calm becomes automatic. If hiding sadness reduced conflict, sadness becomes difficult to express. Eventually, these responses stop feeling intentional. They feel like personality. Stephen Porges' polyvagal theory offers another useful lens. The nervous system is constantly asking one question beneath conscious awareness. Am I safe? Not intellectually. Biologically, safety isn't only about physical danger. It's also about emotional predictability. Can I disappoint someone without losing connection? Can I say no without risking rejection? Can I admit I'm overwhelmed without becoming a burden? If earlier experiences repeatedly linked vulnerability with emotional risk, the nervous system may continue treating openness as something dangerous, even inside healthy relationships. That's why insight alone doesn't immediately change behavior. Someone can fully understand the pattern and still struggle to live differently. Knowledge changes the mind. Safety changes the nervous system. Those aren't always the same process. This is where the identity of the strong one becomes especially complicated. Because the role usually works. People trust them. Employers promote them. Friends depend on them. Families admire them. The adaptation continues receiving rewards, which means there's very little external pressure to question it. Success can sometimes hide emotional exhaustion more effectively than failure ever could. A person may look exceptionally capable while quietly feeling impossible to truly know. Perhaps that's the deepest contradiction of all. The world often celebrates the version of you that required you to disappear a little in order to become it. Not completely, just enough. Enough to keep everyone comfortable. Enough to stay reliable. Enough to make sure your own needs never interrupted the role. And after years of living that way, a difficult question slowly begins to emerge. If everyone knows the strong version of me, who knows the rest? There comes a moment that feels almost insignificant. Someone notices you're tired. They ask, "Are you okay?" For many people, that's a simple question. For the person who's always been the strong one, it can feel unexpectedly difficult. Not because they want to lie, because several answers appear all at once. "I'm fine. I'm just tired. It's nothing. I'm okay." The honest answer often arrives last. Sometimes it never arrives at all. This hesitation isn't necessarily about secrecy. It's about expectation. For years, the nervous system may have associated emotional exposure with consequences. Perhaps vulnerability led to criticism. Perhaps it created more stress for people who already seemed overwhelmed. Perhaps there was simply no space for it. Over time, a quiet rule developed. If I can carry this alone, I should. Rules like these rarely remain conscious. They become instinct. Kristin Neff's research on self-compassion offers an interesting contrast. She argues that many people extend understanding to others far more easily than they extend it to themselves. Notice how naturally the strong one responds when someone else is overwhelmed. They don't usually say, "You should have handled this better." They don't accuse them of being weak. They listen. They reassure. They make room for imperfection. Yet when the same emotional struggle appears inside themselves, the standard suddenly changes. Now competence becomes the expectation. Now needing comfort feels like failure. It's a remarkable double standard, one built not on logic, but on identity. Carl Rogers believed that psychological growth depends on experiencing acceptance that isn't dependent on performance. Unconditional positive regard. Not approval because you've solved everyone's problems. Not love because you've stayed calm. Not connection because you've remained useful. Acceptance, simply because you're a person. For someone whose identity has long been organized around strength, this idea can feel almost unfamiliar. If worth has always been measured by usefulness, what happens when usefulness pauses? Who are you when you're the one who needs support? That question isn't answered intellectually. It's lived, often very slowly. This is why receiving care can feel surprisingly uncomfortable. A friend insists on helping. A partner notices something is wrong. A colleague offers to take some of the workload. Instead of relief, anxiety appears. The person begins apologizing, explaining, trying to earn the kindness that's already being offered. The nervous system isn't rejecting love, it's reacting to something unfamiliar. Sometimes familiarity feels safer than health, even when familiarity is exhausting. Psychology doesn't suggest abandoning strength. Strength remains valuable. Resilience matters. Responsibility matters. What changes is the definition. Real strength isn't the permanent absence of need. It's the flexibility to move between supporting others and allowing yourself to be supported too. A bridge carries weight. But even bridges require maintenance. Ignoring that reality doesn't make the structure stronger. It simply makes collapse more likely. Perhaps the greatest cost of always being the strong one isn't exhaustion. It's identity. When a role is performed long enough, it begins to feel inseparable from the person. The dependable one, the mature one, the calm one, the responsible one. These descriptions may all be true, but none of them capture an entire human being. The danger begins when the role becomes so complete that everything outside it feels impossible to express. Daniel Siegel often describes healthy psychological development as integration. Different parts of experience remain connected rather than divided. strength and vulnerability, confidence and uncertainty, independence and closeness. None of these qualities cancel each other out. They balance each other. When one part disappears entirely, life often becomes narrower than it appears from the outside. A person may look remarkably capable while quietly feeling disconnected from themselves. Perhaps that's why the strongest people sometimes describe an unexpected kind of loneliness. Not because nobody loves them, because few people know them beyond the role they've perfected. Relationships can only become as honest as the identities we allow others to see. If everyone meets the version that never struggles, they can only respond to that version. The real person remains protected and unseen. None of this means the years spent being strong were wasted. Quite the opposite. Those adaptations probably protected something important. They helped someone survive uncertainty. They preserved relationships. They created stability where very little existed, respecting that history matters. Psychology isn't interested in shaming survival. It's interested in understanding it. Because understanding creates choice. And choice creates possibilities that survival alone never could. Maybe that's the question worth leaving with. Not, how do I stop being the strong one, but something quieter, something more difficult. If strength no longer had to be the only thing that defined you, what parts of yourself have been waiting, patiently, to finally be seen? Sometimes the strongest thing a person ever does is allowing someone else to know they don't always have to be.